Hello, creatives. Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Creative, a platform for creatives by creatives. And today, we're going to be talking about niching and positioning for a creative. It's going to be an interesting topic. I can't even wait to hear my guest's perspective on this topic. And you know how we do. I only bring the best of the best. And today, my guest is such an inspiration. And as our culture here, we'll let our guests introduce themselves. So the next voice you're going to hear is drum rolls. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Introduce yourself to the creatives.
My name's Roberto Hollis, and I love being a creative, I guess, yeah. I love sort of the creative side of things. I've always been that way inclined. You know, I've not been a maths head all any of my life, and I've always been interested in the sort of the arts and English, and I like to argue my point a lot. You know, in a lot of essays I'd write in school and in university as well. You know, I take a lot of essay-based subjects, which probably is to my downfall because they're quite stressful, but I like to, argue a point.
We're here today and we're going to talk about a topic that I feel that you'll be able to, share your own thoughts and all of that. I mean, being a creative is quite generic, yeah? But what kind of creative would you describe yourself to be?
I'd say content creator is the best way to describe myself. So I started a YouTube channel when I was around sort of maybe 16, 17. And I sort of started doing a few YouTube videos, but then didn't really kind of take off because kind of studies got in the way. But then I kind of started up again in around 2020, producing regular sort of football content on my YouTube channel. It'd be things like sort of match reviews and sort of predictions videos, like looking ahead to football games at the weekend and things like that. And I just sort of really grew a sort of passion and a sort of really an urge to create content, and the sort of thrill of creating content meant that it kept me kind of on that momentum and on that journey really. So then that sort of transpired over a few years to move towards away from the sort of purely football side of things and the sort of match day vlogs and predictions and match reviews, more to sort of the online world and social media. And I then in 2021, I got my first sort of Twitter account. And then when I joined the Twitter account, things changed, and I kind of, I'd already had a passion in football. But then, so in 2018, I started playing fantasy football. And with Twitter in particular in 2021, I started to sort of join a community an online community on Twitter and kind of get to know like-minded people. And from then, I mean, in the 4 years since, it's been an amazing journey where I've set up a podcast on Spotify for fantasy football, and I've gone to, meetups for fantasy football players and, met people from all around the world really. And we all sort of share this common interest.
It's interesting to know. Content creation, it's something that everybody's doing, right? But I find that there's a way you can niche and position yourself. So that's what we're talking about today. And I mean, you've literally gone ahead into the topic, but I want us to explicitly talk about how you've been able to niche and then position.
I think it's really important that the motivation is the biggest thing, because when I was busy with my studies, it would be very easy to kind of throw the towel in with doing the videos and say, there's probably more important things I should be doing, i.e. GCSE revision and things like that. Yeah. But that I'd keep going back to doing it even and try and fit around my studies because I had the passion for it. And that meant I had the motivation to keep producing content. And even when I've been at university, you'd think that would be something, basically 9 to 5, having to do my own food shops and having to do my own washing. Yeah. I'd have even less time, but actually it was in university that I started the podcast. So, and it's helped that my course of sports journalism, is within the sort of production field as well. So we've been given some great sort of, radio and audio production sort of help with technology, and that those podcast studios have helped create my podcast. So really, I think you have to do something you care about, and even if you think that the people that are listening or watching don't necessarily care about it, they will care about it a lot more when they see your personality come through and your passion come through. And so as much as you want to do something that people will listen to, that might not necessarily be something you're interested in keep doing. So you have to kind of put yourself first to then get other people to keep listening.
That's really something. Put yourself first and you get other people to keep listening. Because, I mean, I think I have also been in that space where I struggled with, I have something to do, but how would it be received? You know, I'm trying to make sure that, you know, engagement is already there, but you haven't even put anything out there first.
No. Well, you have to start simple, right? And I started my YouTube channel in 2020 was as simple as they can get, right? I was doing recording on my laptop, which was the laptop I was using for my sixth form at secondary school. And it was not great quality. And at the start, it was like a screen record. So it wasn't any sort of professional cameras like this. It was like, it's recording my laptop screen. And so it was terrible quality. Probably watching them back now, it's terrible to listen to. But it was just something that I did just to get off the ground, sort of get started. And then I started doing it on photo booth. Literally as simple as that. Like I'd start, you know, it would count you down 3, 2, 1, and you'd go on photo booth and record the videos that way. And that, again, that had problems, technical problems that, you know, I kind of lived with. And I wasn't too fussed about that side of things, of having a polished product at the start. And then the more I've kind of learned about technology and production, and this has been a massive sort of help of the confidence from my course, I've started to then know a lot more about what looks good, what kind of sounds good, and how editing and production comes into it. And, you know, production, like I never thought that I would be someone who'd be a producer of a podcast. I thought I'd be the one, you know, being asked to go on the podcast or sort of talking on it, not editing it all together on Adobe Audition or doing all these things. So I think it just is a thing over time. You get the grasp of doing the nitty gritty details. You think, oh, I wouldn't be interested in doing that, or I wouldn't know how to do it. As soon as you give that a bit of time, you give it a bit of patience, eventually you start to kind of get confidence and find a way to do it.
Great. And I mean, what would you say your highlight of your journey, you know, and did your background somehow play a role in the man or the kind of creative you're becoming right now?
I'd say with regards to my highlight, I think it is just the people you speak to. And I know that's a very generic highlight, but genuinely, the most rewarding part of being a content creator for me is knowing that people care and people listen and people give comments and positive feedback. And obviously you are going to get the people that don't, you know, give positive feedback, but that's inevitable. That's, you know, you kind of take that on as an expectation when you're a creator. So when you get people, you know, tag you on Twitter or tag you on Instagram and say, really enjoyed this podcast, love the, you know, kind of interaction between the co-host and the guest, it really sort of makes your day, because you know that not just what you did was worthwhile, but also it's having a good impact on other people's lives. And so that's the biggest thing I'd say, the most rewarding element of it. I think it's interesting that, because, I mean, I've always been interested in sort of the side of being creative. I mean, very early on, I remember, like, I had, you know, when you're a kid, you have like ideas of what job you want to go on and do. And I was like, you know, a range of things. I was like, oh, I wanted to be a zookeeper. I wanted to be a chef. Of course, I'd never done any of these things. It was all just like in my, you know, toddler sort of young kid age years. But I don't really remember when I got into football. It was quite late. So that's the weird thing, is that I'm such a football obsession person now. If I think back to, you know, when I was 8, 9, 10, and I wasn't that big into football, and my dad kept on trying to push it with me, and I was just not interested at all. And then it flicked a switch really around sort of the age of maybe 14, 13, where I just really started to engage with it a lot more. And then, I've completely gone the other way now. So that's the thing with my personality is I'm all in or I'm all out. I can't do half and half. Yeah. So if you tell me you're going to enjoy this thing or you're going to try and get good at this thing, I wear my heart on my sleeve a lot of the time. So I'm not going to sort of only, dip my toe in it and walk away. I'm going to really try and be the best at it. And that sort of translated towards when I started getting into fantasy football. People play it as a sort of casual game to enjoy football matches, but then there's a different side to the enjoyment of them because, it's almost a bit like you've got a stake in the game. I know there has been comparisons made between fantasy football and like betting and gambling and things, but it's very different because there isn't a sort of money side involved with fantasy football. But with that regard, it's a new way of watching the sport that you don't really get in any other. So, there'd be a terrible, terrible, boring match that would be on a Monday night. And you think, well, if I didn't play fantasy football, I wouldn't watch this match because who cares? It's, Stoke City against Burnley. And it's like, well, I've never heard of those teams. But then if you play fantasy football, it's suddenly you see everything in a new light. And it's like, I've got a player in that team that I want to score points. And I've got someone I've captained in that game. So suddenly it just completely turns around. And I just think my sort of upbringing, I mean, my parents have been amazing. My family has just been the best family ever in terms of they've always supported everything I've ever wanted to do. But as I said early on, I didn't think, I'd be sat here today wanting to do commentary. Yeah. But as soon as I did get a passion for football, where my dad sort of convinced me to support the team he supported all his life, as soon as I got that passion, I've never looked back. So it's kind of like as soon as I'm into something, I'm sort of accelerating forward, and yeah, it's been a sort of long passion of mine to get into football and into football commentary.
It's interesting. I mean, I would have skipped it, but I'm just very curious. What team is that?
It's Watford. It's sort of Hertford, Stevenage area. So sort of just outside London.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's not the best of things to say really, because it's quite embarrassing to support them at the moment. So they go through a lot of managers.
I didn't say that. Rob did.
Yeah, no, I'm not afraid to admit it. But yeah, it's the reality. So once you're with them, you can't leave them. So
you just have to be there.
You're just tied for life. It's inevitable, really. Yeah.
All right, this is really interesting. Conversations already are interesting. What would you describe as the challenges you've probably had on this journey? Just a few of them, the challenges that you were able to go through, and what lessons did you pick from those challenges that have kept you on this path?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think time management has always been a thing for me. I mean, I said earlier about sort of priorities. Sometimes that thing is a thing I struggle with because of what I said about how I'm sort of all in or all out. Yeah. I'm quite obsessive about certain things to the point where if I've started a job, I want to get it finished as soon as possible. And so that has been a challenge in terms of in the year, the years of my secondary school and exams and university. I want to put all my energy into my studies, but then I also want to put all my energy into my creative side of things as well. So, you want to kind of have that work-life balance, but it's not easy because there's certain weeks where you have to give it sort of an 80-20, whereas other weeks you try and split it more of a 40-60. And there is no sort of, 1 week to the next easy decision to make on that, because you have to make sacrifices, both for your work, you have to make sacrifices for your own mental health, but also for the side of thing of your things you enjoy. You have to make sacrifices of what you would enjoy to do for the sake of getting stuff done and being productive. So yeah, you kind of have to balance both being productive from a day-to-day basis on the things that really matter and, the things you're aspiring towards, but also from a mental health point of view to have a break, have a sort of few 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes as short as that, just to kind of check back into things you enjoy, and then you can go again into the world of work.
I love it. Thank you so much. Just curious, if you were not doing what you're doing currently, what would you be doing?
Very good question. It's really hard because I'm such a football obsessed person that trying to picture a sort of passion outside of that. I mean, as I said, I am a very sort of creatively driven person. So, I mean, I like to think I've got patience compared to most people my age. But, you know, something like art that when I was a bit younger, thought I'd always, you know, do on a regular basis, and, you know, reading books. My generation is so used to not reading books and being hooked to the social media side of things. And when I was younger, my dad would always, you know, we'd read books, you know, very regularly on weekdays, and, you know, I'd enjoy like hearing the sort of different voices for different characters and stuff. And it's sad in a way because of the world I'm now living in as a young adult. I don't have that time, so to speak, I do read books, but I don't read as much as I wish I had. You know, back in the day, I was able to have that time because I didn't have, you know, the pressures that, you know, to do work and to do exams and stuff. So, yeah, I think ultimately, I do believe that the things that I enjoy are kind of a bit more old-fashioned than some people. Like radio, for instance, you know, a lot of people my age probably aren't that interested. But like, I think stuff like storytelling, because I love the sort of storytelling side of things with things like radio and also with journalism, hence why sports journalism for me was like a no-brainer, because I loved sport, I loved writing, and it just kind of fused the two together. So I think it's just you've got to just embrace things that make you tick, really, and make you really enjoy the sort of process of doing them.
That's interesting. I mean, it's just very straight to the point, and is what it is.
Yeah, it's really weird because if I try and think of what I would have enjoyed, I mean, maybe it would have been like doing artwork, and, you know, I did exams in secondary school for GCSE art, and I thought before I took the GCSE that I would become better at art. The end result was I was still as bad, but I enjoy doing it because I find it quite therapeutic. It's like when I know I'm doing a poem or I'm doing a piece of art, it's relaxing. But now, because I'm so into the creative side of things and creating content, if you ask me, you've got 30 minutes to spend your time, are you going to do an arting, you know, a bit of artist paintwork or a YouTube video? I'll pick a YouTube video every time now. So it's like, it's a shame because I wish I was a bit more open-minded, because when I was younger, I was probably a lot more like that.
So this is exactly what we're talking about that niche that you have. So I think that you found your niche and you literally want to be on that part, right? But the other question now would be, do you think that you're having enough visibility as you've niched and positioned yourself in the path that you feel passionate about?
I think this goes back to what I said about the community side of things, right? I think when I've produced my podcast, never been one to, you know, a lot of people only produce content for the clicks and for the likes and for the retweets and things like that to get themselves noticed. But I've always just done it for the passion of the process rather than what people think of it or how many likes or views it gets. So I think if you just sort of enjoy doing it on the day, doing the podcast or speaking about the topics in that podcast, to me, that's irrelevant how many people like it or listen to it, because yes, it'd be nice if it was seen on a worldwide basis, but, you know, I also don't sort of necessarily need that to keep going. I just enjoy the small interactions, the sort of the small following that listen every week. And if it's not a big following, I'm not that fussed. So I think going back to the community side of things, they have helped me massively because, you know, when I started my podcast and I joined Twitter, my podcast would not be seen by basically anyone because I was so new to the Twitter sort of environment. But then when I started to follow other accounts and they started to follow me back, and then as I kind of progressed and got more followers, then bigger accounts start to follow me back. And then as I'm posting these podcast episodes, they start to retweet my episodes. And then suddenly now there is a bigger sort of viewership of it. But that's not sort of something I've tried to create myself and sort of artificially do. It's just been a sort of natural thing that has come as a result of getting to know more people, really.
Interesting. Speaking of people, are you open to collaborating with more creatives?
Absolutely. I mean, I love going on other people's podcasts as well. Like, I think people joke about it. I think it might be a quote from The Office or something, but people say, oh, you've got a podcast and he's got a podcast and she's got, and we're all going on other people's podcasts. And it's like, but I love that because it's almost like we're all helping each other along the way. And I think sometimes you get more exposure when you work together and you get more sort of people saying, oh, I really like that video. I've never seen that guest on before. Yeah. And because that person worked with another person, they get the chance to see a new person in the community. So I think, working together is great. And it just brings out each character in sort of more light, really.
So what platforms, how do people connect with you, just in case someone is listening or watching and wants to connect with you?
Yeah, so my podcast is actually, we have got 2 more episodes actually, funny enough, this coming month. So we've kind of not having a bit of a break, but we're going to have a couple more episodes. And that's on Spotify. It's called the Form is Temporary Podcast. That's sort of fantasy football related. But if you wanted to follow me elsewhere, I'm on Twitter at Roberto Hollis 9 and Instagram Roberto_the_pro. So it's just, I've got a few things really going, and my YouTube FPL Yellow Army and Roberto the Hornet. But to be honest, they're all sort of not things that I'm hoping people subscribe to. If they like the content, then great. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just happy to just enjoy the process, and whatever comes as a result of it is sort of a byproduct, really, and only a positive.
Interesting. Well done. And what is that one thing or 2 things or 3 things you say to any creative right now that is struggling or who literally wants to get in the same space where you are at now and just can't lift the finger? What would you say to them?
I think the biggest thing is do something that makes you get out of bed every morning. Because if it doesn't, and I've had days at uni when I was having to hand in a lot of assignments, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel like myself. There was times where I felt very sort of weak and low at points because I wasn't sure like what direction I was going in. But then the days when I have sort of been ready to attack the day have been there because I've had incentives to do that. And I've had things to look forward to. I think having things to look forward to is a really good way to create good content. And if you've got sort of episodes you plan ahead and you've got coming up with trying to get people on, guests on, that gives you a sort of motivation and a push to really get stuff done and be productive. And when there's something to look forward to, there's people that are like you that enjoy doing the process, I think that definitely will make better content, because then the people that you invite on aren't just there to sort of fill the numbers and there because you asked them to. They're there because they really care about it. So I think making sure that you do something you care about and the people you invite on care about, that will just come through in how it comes out, and it will be the most engaging content you can produce, because then it feels like you've worked on it with those people and they've helped you along the way to make some really interesting content.
Thank you. I could actually just sit and just listen to you go, and you just keep going and just keep going.
I have been, it's funny actually. I just sort of finished my last year at uni, and we had an awards night.
Okay.
And there was a poll of like people to vote, what do you want to vote for, and what's the sort of award. So there was a jokey one of like who in the course would be like the Prime Minister, and who in the thing would be, and one of them was who would turn a 5-minute presentation into a 20-minute TED talk. And of course I won that award. And I knew it was coming. So I have been known to waffle on sometimes, but like this is going back to what I said, I like to argue a point, and sometimes I do go off on tangents, but you know, I think it's fun. I like to sort of give my reasons and then explain my thought processes, I guess.
I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to listen to you, to be honest. And I mean, I wish we didn't have to end this episode, but we definitely would have to end it, all right? But before we end it, I'm going to have to put you on the hot seat for just a bit, all right? 3 seconds to answer the questions. First question would be, tell us 5 things you wish people knew about you. 1.
Portuguese.
2.
Paid on the nurse when I was born.
3.
I've once gone to Costa Rica.
4.
I also have a double jointed ability.
5.
And I also once met Cristiano Ronaldo.
Wow, interesting. Okay, maybe he'll be watching this. Who knows?
I doubt it very much. He's playing in Saudi Arabia right now, so I don't think he's got time to watch this. But you never know. You never know.
You never know. You never know. The second one would be, assuming the president of FIFA is listening to you right now, what would you say to him?
I'd say, let's make sure there's safe and equal rules within the game, and let's make sure that the game in its regulation is fair, and you know, let's keep on promoting equal opportunity. That there was in football a big controversy around sort of 4 or 5 years ago now around a potential takeover of a big league coming in. So they called it the European Super League, and it kind of overmined and undermined, overruled a lot of the sort of sporting merit within sort of the league system. I think, you know, FIFA, UEFA, whoever it is, whichever sporting body, try to kind of keep this relegations, promotions, and you know, league positions merit within the game, because I think when you have that, and when you have things like, you know, cups, you know, the FA Cup final on the day of recording today, and Europa League final and Champions League final coming up, you have to have merit, because if you don't have merit in sport, I think you kind of lose the impact of the sport. You know, you see it in the Olympics, you see it in tennis, that, you know, when there's sort of controversies around how did that person get to that Olympics, and, you know, the sort of potential, you know, anti-doping and stuff like that, you want people to have an equal chance. And, you know, you see it at Paralympics, and you see it at amazing events like that where everyone's worked their way to get to that position, and it's a level playing field. So if you have that in football particularly, I think it's important, so that everyone gets a chance to have a go at it.
Thank you so much, Rob, for being here.
No problem.
It's been very insightful. I was happy. I am still happy that I had this session with you, right? So before you leave, thank you so much. We have a mystery book here, and I have a gift for you.
Oh, thank you.
A very tiny gift. Open it. You might have to open it. I'll tell you what next comes when you do.
Very nice. Classy.
So what you do for me and us is flip any of the pages of this book, write something you wish anybody who gets this book to see and know that, hey, you got this. Put your name, put date, and yeah, that's it. Any of the pages, however you want to write, horizontally, vertically, just do it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rob, for being here. Thank you. I'm just delighted that you were here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a really interesting chat.
Thank you. Thank you, creatives, for being here with us today. I enjoyed myself, and I hope you did as well. This is the platform for creatives by creatives. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification button, because the episodes are going to keep rolling in. And yeah, my name is Nnenna Alozie, and I am a creative.